Hey guys, what's up? This is Matt. Today's me once again. Welcome back to another double movie review, aka After I Saw. I actually wanted to make separate videos of these, but since I'm almost done with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, and I really want to talk about that game. Also, as you can see, I'm at my dad's house just because usually when Oscar season comes, we usually watch the Oscars together, so that's why I'm over here. So yeah, and I figured it would just be faster if I reviewed both these movies in one video, though. One's for a kid's movie, one's for a horror movie, so it doesn't really fit in that well, but whatever, I'm going to do it anyway. First off, I'm going to be talking about Kung Fu Panda 4, the fourth installment that we really didn't need. Same with Toy Story 4, but, I thought that was great. Dragon Warrior Po is soon to be retired, even though he doesn't want to be retired, as he has to find a new heir to become the next Dragon Warrior. And during so, he's faced off against a new villain called the Chameleon, who can shapeshift into different people, and she wants to bring the previous villains of the other films from the spirit realm and take their kung fu powers so she can unleash her kung fu skills up against Po. And from there, Po also meets up with a fox, played by Awkwafina. And yeah, that's basically all you really need to know. I rewatched the first three Kung Fu Panda movies. They're still great. Like, I think those movies hold up really well. And think about it, in 2008, when the first movie came out, people thought that it was just going to be a generic, kids film that just looked like Madagascar if it had Kung Fu in it. But it proved to be so much more. It had deep meaning behind it. And it was so good that the sequels that came after were just as good. I can't really say the same for this movie. Not that it was bad, but I do feel like this is the weakest out of the four movies. And when it comes to reviving trilogies by adding a fourth movie, that doesn't always go so well. But, Toy Story did that, and despite a lot of critics loving the movie, people on the internet, or at least from what I've seen, just talk about how the movie was just so unnecessary and it was just flat out bad. I, for one, don't agree with that. I thought it was great. I felt like it was a lot more than just reviving a franchise. I mean, I get why it ended the way it did, but that's a movie I'm always going to defend, and I wouldn't be surprised if Toy Story 5 exceeds my expectations as well. But for this movie, I can definitely say, in terms of reviving a franchise, it really doesn't feel like they're doing a whole lot with this film, especially since not every single actor came back. I mean, Jack Black is back as Po, Dustin Hoffman returns as Shifu, even though he's not really in the movie that much. But unfortunately, the Furious Five don't appear. Well, they're in the movie for like 1% of the time. 1%, maybe 2%. But, Angelina Jolie, David Cross, Lucy Liu, Jackie Chan, and Seth Rogen, they didn't really want to reprise their roles. So that kind of begs the question, why even bother making a fourth one if they're not going to get everything back? But I felt like because, there had to be, some sort of relation with Po and another character, so they added in a new one. So, yeah. And Awkwafina's really good in the movie, and I did like her character. I did kind of like her backstory a little bit. Just it's not executed as well as I kind of wanted to. One thing that I really liked about this movie was the fact that, since Po has his adoptive dad and his real dad, they decide to just live together. And sometimes they have chemistry together. Like, they go and search for Po, and, yeah, they have moments of just, trying to find their son, and they just accept the fact that, Po has two dads now, and not in that kind of way. I don't know, it just kind of sounds a little weird, just the fact that they're living together now, and okay. But I feel like the one thing about this movie that kind of doesn't work is that it just doesn't really have a whole lot to offer in terms of deep meaning, because when it comes to each film, each one feels like it plays out differently. This one, while it kind of does, but it's not really handled in a way that's like fully mature or deep. I mean, there is a meaning behind this, basically how change can be a good thing, and I think that's a good lesson, not just for kids, but sometimes for adults. Like, sometimes changing things is for the better, but I felt like it's not as deep as it could be, because the previous films, they had quite a bit of dark moments, especially the second one. The second one had a very dark tone to it. I mean, I feel like that could have worked so well here. But, I mean, it does have its emotion, but, just take a look at Puss in Boots' Last Wish. That had tons of dark elements to it, and that movie, I'm still shocked at how good that movie was. So, if they can do that with Puss in Boots 2, why couldn't DreamWorks do the same with this? Like, I feel like it aims more to the humorous side rather than, I mean, it's expected. These movies, they're supposed to be comedic, they're supposed to entertain kids, but they managed to entertain adults in the best possible way with the last three movies. But right here, adults can get a few laughs, but not really much else after that. So, yeah, despite the fact that I'm really, like, digging deep into this movie and just filling out all the negatives I have with it, I still generally had a pleasant time. I mean, these movies, they're not very long. They're aiming to get right to the point of what they're trying to do, and hey, it was nice to see some of the previous villains show up. I mean, Tai Long appears, and he's cool. So, yeah. Also, I kind of knew how the film was going to wrap up by the end. I'm not going to spoil, but I knew where it was heading. Like, I feel like everybody knew where it was heading. But kids aren't really going to care. All they just came for is, Poe returning for another adventure. It might be its last. I kind of hope it is. I feel like it will be. So yeah, it's not necessary, and it's not the best in the franchise, but it's not a bad watch. It's inoffensive, it's harmless, but I would have preferred it if they went for a less safe route and actually did have more of those darker tones that the previous films had, but it's not a bad watch. If I were to rewatch the movies, I would probably just watch the first three again, and if I was to watch the fourth one, I would probably just wait till I have kids. The closest I have to that is a nephew, but I don't see him that often, so yeah. Anyways, next movie I'm going to be talking about is Imaginary. Now, this movie involves a woman, her husband, and her stepkids as they move into a new house, and one of the kids makes a new friend down in a creepy basement, which just so happens to be a teddy bear that she calls her imaginary friend. Though, it turns out throughout the movie, he is a lot more than just imaginary. Oh no. If I go any further, honestly, should I really spoil? Because this movie really wasn't that good. It has a unique idea, it's just, the movie I've seen worse from Blumhouse, but it hasn't been really that good of a start for horror movies this year, especially since the very first horror movie that came out last year was really good. And January in horror doesn't go very well, but whatever. I mean, this movie honestly could have came out in January, but, Night Swim already did that, and that wasn't very good. But I can say that for stuff that I did like about the movie, I like the concept. I thought the effects, too. There are a couple uses of practical effects which I thought were pretty cool, and the performances, they're fine enough. Not Oscar worthy, but they do try their best. I just feel like the concept behind the movie is kind of handled kind of poorly, mainly just due to the fact that they just took all the stuff that was in previous horror films, like all the typical horror cliches we would see. Creepy basement, kid having a new friend that's super creepy, and that's not good for them. Jump scares, false jump scares, and and a teenage girl that occasionally has a boy over. Yeah, it's basically what you would see, and it's PG-13, so that's bound to happen. And horror cliches can work well when done right, but I feel like most of them, they didn't really do it much for me. I can say that in terms of the most entertaining part, it would definitely have to be the last act, though that was kind of messy too, because there's a time where the movie seems like it's going to end, but then just keeps going. They're just all like, nope, psych, we're still going on. Like, it didn't know how to fully end. Like, it happens once, but I feel like they could have done that to just save the extra 10 minutes. Yeah, this movie can feel like it drags on a little too long. I mean, I didn't mind the pacing that much if I was, like, fully invested and the movie actually had some more surprises to give rather than it just, being, the way it's played out in terms of how the bear is there, I thought was, like I said before, it could have been handled so much better, and the movie it honestly just doesn't feel that scary or creepy. I mean, the bear, it wasn't creepy at all. Though, if I'm being honest, it's definitely creepier than that. But yeah, Imaginary has a really unique concept. It's just kind of poorly executed, and it reminds you of other familiar projects, and it offers very few surprises. It just didn't really know how to work in giving people the chills. It just has a few jump scares and has a last act that reminds me a little bit of Insidious and Coraline. Just in a very, it honestly felt kind of goofy in the end. Just, yeah, it not like super laughable or anything like that, because the movie just, it definitely does go more seriously than comedic, because it tries to be serious, but in all honesty, it kind of felt a little silly. And like I said, good premise, but not handled very well in the end. It could have been far worse. It could have been way worse than it was. So the fact that we're not getting a really good start with horror movies, it's probably not going to get super better from here, because, well, this month we have that too. Which I'm kind of looking forward to seeing, but I already have a skit plan for that, so I am gonna see it. So yeah, but anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and yeah, I'll see you guys later. Word out.